Hey everybody, and welcome to The Safe Zone. I'm Michael here with Max, and this time we're taking a special look at the latest build of the DayZ Mod. And for those of you who aren't in the know, this is kind of the game that got us started into covering these sorts of games a little over a year ago. DayZ is a mod for Arma 2, which is a very hyper-realistic military simulator, and this mod uses that hyper-realism to very great effect in creating what I would consider to be the definitive zombie survival sandbox simulator of our time. But of course, with the popularity of the mod, there has been a standalone version of the game in development for quite some time now, which, fingers crossed, should be coming out soon. And we thought it would be a good idea to take one last look at the mod in its current fully developed state to really show just how far it's come and why this is such an important and influential game for this genre. So as you can see, and if you haven't played the DayZ mod in a while, this may be new to you. When you spawn into a vanilla DayZ server these days, you can actually select your spawn. So you can pick a random location, or in this case, I'm going to spawn in Electro because it's one of the major cities on the map, and there should be a lot of interesting stuff for us to look at and observe while we talk about all this stuff. So away we go. Now, one interesting thing about spawning in Electro is that you can actually spawn in pretty different parts of the map depending on where it decides to drop you. Here I've gotten a spawn near the eastern edge of the city over by Dracon with some industrial buildings and whatnot off in the distance. And fortunately, because I've spent quite a bit of time playing this game, I have a really good idea where I am. But I think back to like the first times that we played this and how absolutely terrifying and crazy it was to just figure out where you were and how you might actually hook up with other people you were trying to play with.
Yeah, I remember the first spawn I ever had was way up coast, like way up north along the coast,
Hmm.
and I died pretty quickly.
Yeah, I feel like the kind of first or second thing that happens to you in DayZ is that you die. You know, like kind of regardless of your circumstances, because especially when you first start to play this mod, it's almost overwhelming just how hardcore it can be. Like we've gotten so accustomed to it over this past year or so that you almost don't even really think twice about it because it's kind of it almost becomes second nature at a certain point. But really, like stopping and thinking back on it, like those first couple times you play this game, it's really a pretty overwhelming experience, I think, for a lot of people. Just coming to grips with the eccentricities of the ARMA interface and how the inventory system works and how you take different stances and manipulate your character in ways that are a little non-traditional. I mean, just something as simple as holding the Alt key to look back over your shoulder as you're running. Something you don't typically see in most first-person shooters, but is commonplace in ARMA and actually very integral, I think, to this experience being as good as it is.
Oh yeah, I mean, the more that that game immerses you, I think the better job it's doing of really getting you in that kind of survival mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a case of a great combination, right? A great premise for a mod meshing perfectly with the things that this game engine did well to begin with. Arma has a lot of what I would consider to be shortcomings in the grand scheme of things, but there are also some things that it does exceptionally well. And I think this mod does a lot to leverage the things that the game does well and minimize the things that it doesn't do well in such a way that it's kind of obvious why this thing took off and became such a big deal for a lot of people. Because when you stop and think about it, if you look at the Chernaru's map, which is what's used in Vanilla DayZ, this map almost seems like it was made to be the area that a zombie apocalypse takes place in. Like there's so many rundown, half-destroyed buildings, which in the context of the original game, it's supposed to be a war zone, so it makes sense in that context, but it works equally well in the zombie apocalypse context, or even more so.
Yeah, and the game is so, like, the world, the map for it that they use in Chernobyl is so massive, and actually really it's sometimes so lulling. You know, it really is kind of beautiful in some places, because the Arma engine is actually, you know, quite a nice uh, place to kind of start, especially if you're going to mod and make your own game.
Yeah, I think the other thing that it does in terms of lulling you is because the map is so big, you can have these long periods where you never see anyone or interact with anything, and then all of a sudden they're punctuated by these extremely dramatic circumstances. You know, you run into somebody in the middle of the woods, or you come around a corner after like an hour of just running around alone and find somebody or find a pack of zombies or something, and you get these incredibly intense moments that really define the game to a large extent.
Yeah, I mean, it's just constant state of fear and constant lulling that the game really does, because, you know, when you first spawn in Electro, you know, it's one of those. Electro is definitely more lively, because I think a lot of people like to spawn there for like good starter gear. So that's definitely, yeah, one of the more active places that you're going to run into more zombies and more players.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that another thing that has changed the dynamic of the game is the ability to spawn in a specific place, because it used to be that if you wanted to play in a specific area, you'd have to run there, you know, from wherever you spawn. So if you wanted to meet a bunch of people in Electro, they might spawn at the different corners of the map and have to spend an hour or two just getting to each other. So I'll be very curious to see whether or not um, the standalone game allows for directed spawning or not, because I feel like that's going to make a big difference as to how hardcore and how much of a commitment and an investment playing the game is. Because I know, you know, when we first started making DayZ videos, a lot of our time would be spent just getting to each other and being able to interact, you know, much less actually doing anything as a group.
Yeah, there's actually very few instances of us accomplishing anything as one entity.
Yeah, and well, and a lot of times too, a lot of our escapades in this game would be about trying to go help other people. You know, it'd be like, so and so broke their leg up at this place, and we need to go take them the morphine injector so their character won't die. Because, you know, a big aspect of this game is about like how long can your character survive. So it got to be a, you know, a big consideration of, you know, what are we going to do to help keep these characters that have been alive for a long time going, because it almost becomes a matter of pride. You know, how long have you survived in this game? Which I think, you know, because of the permadeath aspect to it, that's something that it has that a lot of other games just don't.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, our good buddy Eric, you know, he had probably one of the longest characters on DayZ. He lived for, I think, an actual year, like game time, something like 300 days or something like that before he finally died.
And it almost got to a point where, you know, his anxiety about playing the game would literally go up like the longer his character lived, because he just had more and more to lose. Like, it wasn't just the equipment and the gear and whatnot, it was the prestige of, you know, having a character that had been alive that long. And you know, it was just crazy, like, you know, to hear him talk about, oh man, I really don't want to do anything too crazy because my guy might die, and to, you know, have that level of attention or, you know, attachment to a video game character, you don't get that from just any game, I don't think. Or at least I certainly don't.
Well, yeah, it's incredibly difficult to actually make make you worry, make a product that makes you, actually that invested in, what the player is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I've played a lot of games over the years, and this is definitely one of those games where almost the very first time I played it or saw it in action, I kind of knew that it was special. I knew that it was going to be a big deal and that it was going to be something that people were going to relate to and gravitate to because it's just got these aspects to it that are so unique and differentiate it so much from other experiences that are out there that you can't help but acknowledge that. Like for whatever flaws or issues that the mod has, and there's actually been quite a bit of work done to refine and polish the mod as much as possible within the context of Arma. But for whatever issues this thing has, it's provided a tremendous amount of entertainment value and just coolness and pushing the industry forward in a lot of ways that I don't think we've seen a game this influential since probably World of Warcraft, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, DayZ is arguably the reason why, the games that me and Mike do for the Safe Zone even exist or have gotten to be as popular and as played as, DayZ.
Yeah, I mean, people like to argue a lot about which one of these games came first or what was in development first or what got funded first or whatever. And, I think there is something to be said for like, you can have, a couple of different games, existing in a vacuum or whatever. But to say that this game didn't inspire or, set a precedent at the very least for proving that this kind of gameplay was something that people wanted to do and was desirable, I think is just entirely not accurate. This is very clearly a game that has had a tremendous amount of influence on not only other games but the gaming industry at large, I would say, at this point.
Well, yeah, for a mod of an established game to, to kind of to the point where people are only buying Arma 2 and Arma 2 Operation Arrowhead for the sole purpose of playing DayZ, I think that in itself has a lot to say.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that a big part of the reason why Arma 2 was such a big selling game on Steam this past year is because of this mod. Like, you can't really argue that, I don't think. And I know the Arma community gets salty about that or gets bitter about that because, obviously Arma had a very good, solid, dedicated community of people who wanted to play Arma. But, the fact of the matter is, I'm sure some of those DayZ players, tried Arma and enjoyed it and helped to bolster that community at some point. It couldn't have been all bad for those folks, despite what some people like to project. I know, the Arma community likes to complain about things like DayZ and Wasteland and other mods that take away from the core Arma experience, but at the same time, like this, Arma itself is way more on the radar of the average gamer than it ever would have been had this mod never existed.
Well, yeah, I mean, just on Twitch, Arma I think is still definitely one of the top streamed games out there. I mean, when QuickNap gaming still existed, that all those guys were really dedicated and really skilled, I would have to say, at playing Arma.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's a lot of good streamers out there, playing Arma and playing DayZ and doing all of those things that help to create this community, of people who are into these sorts of games. I mean, Twitch definitely had a huge impact on the popularization of this game because, when somebody says to you, oh, hey, you should check out this mod for this Arma game, it's pretty cool. That's one thing. But if you can go to a place like Twitch and watch somebody play it for 4 hours at a time and see like how cool it is and how much fun they're having and all that sort of thing, I think that does a lot more to sell that experience to people than just word of mouth ever could.
Oh yeah, I mean, and not even to mention, like the Survivor games that they hold now, which, everybody, most big streamers on Twitch and even some YouTubers always try and, kind of punch their ticket for that event.
Yeah, I mean and I know as somebody who's been following this game from the beginning, that's an event that I look forward to every couple of months. Whenever there's a new one of those, I'm always trying to make sure that I'm going to be around to watch that or see what's going on, because the stuff that happens in those events is so crazy. You got people like running each other over with tractors and stuff, because some guy's leg's broken in the field and he's like battle rolling around a tractor for the guys trying to run him over. Like, where else are you going to see that?
Yeah, I mean, you'll be hard pressed to actually get anything else like that.
And I mean, that's some of that is kind of the grassroots nature of the game and the mod and the scene that's built up around it. You get that kind of quirky entertainment value that you aren't necessarily going to get from like a packaged, homogenized, very calculated AAA game release. There's something to be said about that indie kind of freestyle, devil may care attitude that something like this kind of cultivates, because I mean, even just look at the way the mod itself has diversified. You have so many different forks of the DayZ mod at this point. You've got Epoch and Overwatch and Origins and all of these different flavors of the mod that do things slightly differently, like letting you self-blood bag, or having more vehicles on the map, or having completely different maps to play on. Like, the community that's built up around this mod is just absolutely amazing when you stop and think about it. And it's that kind of lightning in a bottle scenario that most like big game developers and publishers dream of. A lot of companies out there would dream of having the community and the support and like the enthusiasm around their game that this game has.
Yeah, and it was a mod made by like, 10 people.
Yeah, if that. I mean, the original versions of this were basically Rocket, sitting in his room, coding this stuff. And I mean, granted, you have, a lot more people involved in that now. But when you think about the idea that the seed of this, or the basic idea of this game came from basically one dude and with a handful of help, I mean, that's kind of amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, the strides that this game has made just within, I'd have to say just this past year, because that's, all really we've been doing since 2012 when we started to play DayZ almost religiously.
Man, that zombie really took a lot of bullets. Not used to them taking that many. I mean, usually you want to go for a headshot, but usually a couple of chest shots will do it. This PDW's really lost a lot of its stopping power. That's another thing about the mod, though, is like the mod changes so much as different versions and patches come out. Like, if you're not keeping up on what's going on with it, it's real easy to fall out of the loop as to like, weapon balance and other factors, like how tough the zombies are, or where their hits boxes are, how good melee is. All that stuff sort of changes almost month to month as the mod goes through variations. I mean, heck, even just something as simple as the inventory screen has changed radically since the mod came out, just at the beginning of last year. It was, there was, for a long time there, it was just using the default Arma inventory, and now you've got like drag and drop, and it may be a little sketchy at times, but it's definitely an improvement over what was there.
Oh yeah, I mean, the game I think is at this point in like 1.8, and
Yeah.
yeah, they had like a final. They wanted to do like a final patch, I would guess, for the mod before Standalone comes out, and that was 1.7, and that was really where Vanilla WoW actually became a lot more difficult.
Yeah, yeah. You said, wow. That's funny. I mean, it just goes to show, like, you mention a game like WoW in the same breath with this, and it actually took me a minute to realize, and I think it kind of goes back to what we said before. Like, there's a handful of games that I talk about or think about, and I kind of put them in that upper echelon of, like, games that are super meaningful or games that really did something that's noteworthy. And I think this is definitely one of those games. You know, and to someone who hasn't played it before, who maybe looks at this footage and sees how janky it can be, or how kind of unpolished it is in some respects, you might look at it and say, "Oh, what are you talking about? This is garbage," or whatever. But there's something about the experience of actually playing this game that I think transcends what you get out of watching it played on a video. And you might get a sense of what it's about from watching this, but you're not going to actually understand the true nature of this game and how significant it is until you actually take the time to play it yourself and understand all the different mechanics that are going on within it. I mean, it's just one of those things, it's kind of cliche to say this, but it's one of those things you just have to experience for yourself to really understand completely.
Yeah, I mean, it's took us, a year to actually get, anywhere near experienced and, knowledgeable of the game as we are right now
Hmm.
throughout our constant playthroughs and everything of this game.
And I'll be the first to admit that I'm a little bit out of the loop on what's going on with the mod these days, because honestly I've been so busy with other things and kind of in anticipation of Standalone for so long that at a certain point I kind of fell out of the habit of playing the mod. But I mean, trust me when I say I've got hundreds of hours logged in this mod, and I think that says a lot about just how much there is there to experience, and that I think is where the different forks of the mod come into play a lot, because you get tired of running around the same map. There's a different map. You get tired of the same rule set for what you do within the map. There's another mod, to change that up or spice it up a bit, and I think that diversity of content and that diversity of gameplay that the mod has provided is one of the things that's really kept DayZ going over the past year. I think if the community for this game wasn't as robust as it is, we wouldn't still be talking about it now, and we wouldn't still be so excited for the standalone. And actually, that's going to be one of the things when standalone comes out that's going to be interesting to see is how people respond to that initial version of the game, because clearly it's not going to have all of the functionality that's represented in all the different versions of the mod now. You're not going to have cars and helicopters and motorcycles and, all of the little variants and wrinkles to the game mechanics and stuff that you see represented in the mod forks. It's going to be a very focused, very specific experience, and I'm curious as to what the adoption rate will be of people who want to jump into standalone and make that their game of choice, or people who want to hang out and wait for standalone to mature before they leave the mod behind.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're still going to have people that go back and play those varied versions of it, like you were talking about before, Overwatch and Origins, just because it's something different.
Hmm. I know a lot of streamers like Overwatch because there's so many weapons available, and it creates more of an action, oriented scenario, which is more entertaining, for the people who are watching their stream. But then some people go the full survivalist route, and they want to like hang out in the woods and eat nuts and berries and kill pigs and stuff. It's largely what you're going for and what you're after from the experience is going to dictate what flavor of the mod you want to go with. I mean, I still feel personally like vanilla DayZ does a good job of creating a balanced experience that appeals to like a fairly wide range of people, but I can definitely understand why people would play one version of the mod or another for various reasons.
Well, yeah. Yeah, flavor of the month and all that.
Hmm. Cool. Well, as you folks can see, I've attracted quite a few friends here uh, who are following me along the docks and looking to gnaw my face off. But there's some bugs in DayZ Mod that you can always count on, and that's another thing I'll be interested to see when Standalone comes out, because you count on things like zombies not running indoors or not being able to walk out on these docks in the major cities, and stuff like that you've come to really rely on as almost like gameplay mechanics, which is kind of funny when you talk about bugs as gameplay mechanics, but that's kind of what this game is to a certain extent. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the way I play this game when I can't rely on those glitches anymore. When I have to actually worry about a zombie running at me at full speed indoors, or not being able to follow, or being able to follow me in an area where they couldn't before. It's really going to be an interesting time to observe this game and how the standalone changes it, and really appreciate the differences between the standalone and the mod.
Well, yeah, because like you said, they're going to be going for something very, very specific, almost with the next game. Like it's going to be polished. Like everything that we love about the mod is pretty much going to be polished to a point where, like you said, you can't count on those old bugs kind of saving you, or almost again being like
a crutch.
Yeah, yeah.
I always find myself thinking this and saying this when I first start playing this game after an absence, but it really does bear repeating, and it's something that's worth pointing out, is just how amazing Arma can look at times, and how just immersive and how much it can make you feel like you're actually in a place, more so than most any other game that I've played. Like there's just these little details about the lighting and the texture work and the way things are done in this game that really separate it from a lot of other titles in a meaningful way. Like, for all its glitch and all its jank, there's something to be said for Arma just being this completely unique kind of almost visionary engine, in the sense of the way it approaches certain things that other engines just don't consider. Just to know how much effort and how much tech has gone into this game, that being Arma, and that's been repurposed to such good effect in this mod, it really is almost like a perfect storm of circumstances, because another engine wouldn't have been able to handle what this mod is trying to do with it. And it's had Arma not existed, you probably almost certainly would not have had DayZ in the form that we've come to know it, and I think that's a really important thing to kind of acknowledge moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think as long as DayZ Standalone takes what Arma 3 has, provided, because Arma 3 is awesome game, especially the finished product. I'm really kind of excited to see what DayZ Standalone took from that, and used to its advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, as you can see, I've managed to take a couple dirt naps here, and I think we've talked at a good long while about DayZ and kind of what's important about it. I apologize for some of the frame rate issues here, especially at the beginnings of my spawns. As you can see, the frame rate's kind of smoothing out as I play more after spawning each time. I think that's just a little glitch in Fraps here, but it's really not indicative of the performance of the game. It's just, I think it takes Fraps a little while to adjust to the way I have the game set up. I do have the game set right now to use optimized graphics settings, so it's looking, maybe a little better than it used to when I used to record footage for it. But as you can see, the longer I live, the better it runs. And I'm sure that most folks, especially on newer machines, won't have any trouble running this properly at a nice high frame rate if they do choose to check the mod out. It's so hard to tell what to recommend to people at this point, because the standalone has been in development for so long now, and it's been talked about how it's on the verge of coming out and the verge of the alpha being released for ages now. Who knows? It could come out tomorrow. It could come out 6 months from now. So, we're kind of approaching that time of the year where there's a lot of Steam sales and whatnot. Maybe if you have always had the itch to try this game out, maybe now's a good time to check out the mod. Or, if you're a patient sort of person and you want to just wait and see what happens with it, wait a little bit longer and maybe you can just jump in at standalone. But I think this is probably a pretty good way to wrap this up. Nice scenic view of my surroundings here. I'm feeling very mellow and content, which is usually about the time you get sniped by a by a DMR.
Cruel fate.
Oh, cruel fate. Yeah, I'm just gonna sit down here in this field and go into third person. That's how I roll. Trying to remember. Oh, throwing road flares. It's interesting. It's another little weird difference in the mod now. When you spawn a new character, it spawns you in such a way that you have road flares equipped and are ready to throw. You don't even have to hit the F key anymore to get them ready. I'm just going to make a little pinwheel of road flares here on this hillside, and somebody will come running by it and wonder, WTF?
Oh, speaking of Arma 2, the combined operations is half off right now during the Steam sale.
Yeah, although by the time we get this video up, that probably won't be the case anymore. But yeah, I mean, the Christmas sale or the holiday sale will definitely be coming up soon, so that'll be another opportunity for that for sure. But it sounds like I'm making eggs. That's probably a good way to go out. Alright. I salute you, Arma 2 and the DayZ Mod. You've provided me with quite a bit of fun over the past year, and I appreciate that. So, good on you.